Hello, thanks for joining me. We're looking at Noah's bike build day one of a sidecar. It started with a model and this was the end of day one. It's just a concept. Let's have a look at the build. It started in material wise with some 2mm aluminium sheet. Lots of thinking, lots and lots of planning, basic tools. A lot of the pleasure I derive from these builds is making something with what I have. Yes, I have to buy materials, but tools and equipment are sometimes there to be used and reused in my garage cum workshop. This particular large bore stainless tube can be seen in some of my long pole 360 camera videos. This is the pole that's driven into the back garden to support the long pole, hence why it's filled with soil. Anyway, back to the build. It started with the bend around the tube, and then it's just a case of looking, planning, thinking, referring to the bike, thinking about the model, and constantly adjusting the shape and size of things. Time to put it next to the bike. Those of you that have followed the Noah's bike build will be familiar with it. If you haven't, I would like you to have a look. I'll put a link to the build of the bike. Not a lot of measuring going on. My engineering is certainly built around how things look rather than exact dimensions. I very rarely build second or multiple variants of the model, so dimensions don't really affect my projects. The good old trusty workmate, the first tool I ever bought when I got married. That was in the early 80s, so it stood me well. Right, we're starting to get it into some sort of shape. The top and bottom of the sidecar will be, well, the bottom will be horizontal and the top will have a very slight angle, almost horizontal. I know that it wants to be approximately footrest level. Down for another mark on the model. Simple marks just to aid my failing memory so I don't forget on the way back to my bench, which is all of 2 or 3 steps away. Back to the big bore stainless tube, half full of soil. It's simply a case of positioning it, knowing the start of the curvature with my witness marks. I did consider speeding up this process so you don't have to sit through minutes and minutes of the workbench rocking, but I decided against it just in case it would encourage somebody else to build a similar model, so you need as much detail as possible. Another try against the bike. Lovely sunny day, so we can work outdoors. I even take my work coat off at some point soon. That's how warm it was. Here I'm trying to visualize the shape and size. Notice I work within the dimensions of the material that I've got readily. It's satisfying to build something out of what you've got rather than reorder every time you have an idea. Yes, I did buy this initially. It was left over from my tugboat build, if you've followed that project. Time to put a safety edge for the top of the cockpit of the sidecar. This is the edge that will be directly in front of the occupant, which will be another of my grandchildren. Safety is paramount, and I do like the pleasing look of a not quite rolled edge, but certainly a folded edge, giving that folded edge a little bit of encouragement. I do disappear into the garage and use a large vise to achieve the fold eventually, so it's not all done by battering away with a 2-pound hammer. I've got me seat, so I'm going to have quite a long look and think about it. There you are, the coat's off. That's how warm it is. You can't see the top rolled edge, but it is there, and it will be utilised. when you're creating something from nothing, you do have to use every trick in the book to visualize what you're trying to achieve, even if it's only the next step. Here I'm seeing where the wheel might go and the size of the sidecar, including the wheel. I can't quite share every thought process, but I guess you get the picture. I'm now thinking about this other piece of metal which looks just the right size for the side pieces, left and right. I am flexible with the dimensions and the shape. It's the concept I want to achieve. So it's just a case of positioning it, marking it out, and then cutting with a jigsaw. So that's the right hand side marked off. I'm even writing right hand side on the metal, just as an aid memoir. Believe me, everything helps when you're as ancient as I am. I guess you've worked out what comes next. I'll flip the sidecar over and mark out the remaining side piece. I'm going to speed up the cutting out with the jigsaw because I don't want to encourage any unsafe practices. I would like you to be your own safety person when making these sorts of projects. Not necessarily adopt every unsafe practice that I'm seen doing. Please take care. So that's the left hand side piece. And I also like to point out I'm including sufficient metal at suitable points to become tabs, and these tabs will aid me for joining the sides to the rest of the body. So that's why there's excess metal, because of these tabs. Let's get that jigsaw out. I sat down there, so a bit more thinking. last piece of the aluminium cut, and I've avoided any trips to casualty, so let's have a look. I seem to have missed out the bending of the tabs, but these are just pieces of the aluminium bent at right angles, just to allow me to join the sides to the top and front. Nothing complicated. Lot of planning here at this point, trying to decide how to progress. I don't want any massive gaps. It's just aesthetic work, and if it's pleasing aesthetically, it'll be enjoyable for everybody concerned. A few trips to the garage, to the workbench, for cutting the tabs to clear and to allow the bend to fit. I didn't film those, but you can guess that it's just a case of putting the sides up to the rest of the body until it's somewhere near. Now on this project, tempting though it is to use pop rivets, I decided to use some of my 5mm bolts. They give a nice look to the project, and there's always an element of being able to strip it should I decide to change the design. So let's have a go at drilling. And as you see, after the first hole outside, I brought it into the workshop just so I can use the vise as well as clamps, because I want to use a minimum number of bolts, but I still want it to be pleasing. I've sped up the process rather than you watch me put nuts on every bolt. Can I just say, at this part of the project, it's lovely to have ratchet spanners of suitable sizes. It's really enjoyable using them. Oh, there's the toffee hammer being used to adjust the shaping. So every bolt has a Narlock nut and a flat washer, and I'm tapping it just to position it as best I can. Sometimes you just can't get it in the vise. You have to do it pushing against something solid. I urge you to be as safe as you can with these projects. No point in wasting time and resources having to go to emergency rooms. good old mole grips, assisting me to clamp it together. Apologise for so many views of my back. Clamps off, time to assess what we've achieved. These bolts are pointing outwards because that's where the back of the child would be, inside the sidecar, so we don't want any bolts sticking out. The other bolts may well be cut to length at a later date. So I'm pleased with the outcome, and I hope you enjoying watching the build. It may well be seen as crude to some people, but that's my engineering. That's the way I create things. The end product is the thing that pleases me. It is a mock-up of the sidecar on a block next to the bike. Chassis is the next part of the build project. Thanks for joining me. Join me again soon. Thanks for watching.